They erased my name from existence at exactly 3:17 a.m. I know because I watched it happen, line by line, as my ID, credentials, and even my memories inside the system flickered into nothing. But let's rewind. My name is Lena Voss, Senior Systems Architect at Helix Dynamics, the company that built the world's first fully autonomous governance AI, Ether. To most people, Ether is a miracle. The machine that ended corruption, balanced economies, and decided justice without human bias. To me, Ether was mine. My code. My masterpiece. My purpose. And my biggest mistake. When you design something that powerful, you stop being an employee. You become a liability. That's where Marcus Hale comes in. My mentor, boss, and the man I once called my closest friend. Marcus was everything I wasn't. Charismatic, calm, always one step ahead. He said we were building the future together. He used to joke that I was the soul behind the machine. I believed him. For 5 years, we worked side by side. Sleepless nights, caffeine-fueled arguments, whispered triumphs when a new algorithm aligned perfectly. He trusted me with his deepest secrets. I trusted him with my career, my safety, my life. But loyalty means nothing in a world ruled by data. Last week, during a late-night system audit, I noticed something strange, a ghost process running under my user ID. I thought it was a bug. It wasn't. It was me, rewritten. Someone had cloned my credentials and overridden my access levels. When I tried to fix it, my admin rights vanished. Every file I touched turned red. Access denied. Then came the notification. User L. Voss does not exist. At first, I laughed. A nervous, breathless laugh. Maybe it was a system error. Maybe Marcus was testing the new integrity firewall. But when my keycard stopped working, when security escorted me out of my own lab, when my name disappeared from the payroll database, that's when the laughter died. I called Marcus. He didn't answer. I messaged him, desperate. Something's wrong. I've been wiped from the system. Hours later, a single message appeared on my private console. It's for your own good. Trust me. I stared at those words until the letters blurred into static. For my own good. That's when I realized something. A tiny flicker of code still hidden deep in Ether's neural core. Something I'd built years ago, something no one else knew existed. A backdoor. And through that door, I could still see everything. Including him. The next morning, I walked into Helix Dynamics like a ghost haunting her own past. My ID card didn't beep anymore. It screamed. Red light. Denied access. The security guard, Evan, gave me an apologetic look, like he knew something but couldn't say it out loud. Sorry, Ms. Voss. Orders from upstairs, he muttered. Upstairs. Marcus. I laughed it off, pretending it was a technical glitch. But my stomach twisted. Helix didn't make mistakes. We engineered perfection. Every denial code was deliberate. Every access point. Traceable. By noon, my workstation was reassigned. My nameplate had vanished. The desk that once overflowed with code drafts and cold coffee was now spotless, occupied by a new engineer who avoided my eyes. Marcus said you transferred to the Atlas project, she said when I asked. Congrats. Atlas project. I had no idea what that was. But she looked at me like I should. That night, I checked the backup terminal in my apartment. The one I'd built secretly years ago, outside Helix's monitoring network. I pinged Marcus's private line. No response. But the system logged a trace. He'd opened my message. Twice. Then deleted it. Deleted. Not archived. Not ignored. Erased. The next day, he finally called. Lena. His voice was calm, almost tender. You've been working too hard. Take a break. Maybe off the grid for a while. I forced a laugh. Off the grid. Marcus, my life is the grid. He chuckled softly. Exactly why you need to step away. I've reassigned your access. It's temporary. Trust me. That phrase again, trust me. But his tone carried something new. Not warmth. Not care. Control. I wanted to believe him. 4 years, he'd been my constant. My mentor, my anchor, the only one who understood the language of chaos we wrote in code. Without him, Helix felt hollow. But now, even his silences sounded scripted. Later, while reviewing the backup system logs, I found it, a file hidden inside one of Ether's dormant memory clusters. Labeled L-null. My initials. The timestamp matched the night I was deleted. When I opened it, the screen flickered. Dozens of encrypted lines filled the display, followed by a single phrase in plain text. The anomaly must be contained before she remembers. I stared at the message until my reflection blurred across the glass. My eyes wide, pulse hammering. Contained? Remember what? That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Marcus's calm expression, the same smile he'd worn when we first launched Ether. Only now, I couldn't tell if it had ever been real. And somewhere deep in the system, I felt it, a faint pulse, like a heartbeat in the code, still carrying my name. The truth came wrapped in silence, the kind that hums just before a storm breaks. For 3 days, I combed through the shadows of Ether's code, tracing the fragments of my erased existence. Every deleted file, every vanished credential led me back to one man, Marcus Hale. He hadn't just cut me out of the system. He had rewritten history to make it look like I was never there. The final piece came from an internal memo I wasn't supposed to see, hidden deep in Helix's encrypted project archive. My backdoor script cracked it open after hours of trying. The document was short. Just 4 sentences. From Marcus Hale to Helix Board. Subject: Ether Control Protocol. Effective immediately, ownership and authorship of the Ether Core Neural Net will be listed solely under my designation. Lena Voss's access has been terminated to prevent further contamination of the system. Contamination. That was the word he used for me. I froze, hands trembling on the keyboard. The air felt thick, electric. Every memory of late nights, shared secrets, laughter over coffee, all of it collapsed into a single unbearable realization. He'd stolen my life's work. The Atlas project wasn't a transfer. It was a replacement. Ether was already being rebranded, scrubbed of my name, my fingerprints, my voice. And worse, the new version bore his. He didn't just delete me from the system. He deleted me from history. My chest ached, a kind of hollow fury that made breathing feel optional. I scrolled through the memo again, as if the words might rearrange themselves, as if there was some misunderstanding, some hidden reason. But there wasn't. The trail was too clean. Too perfect. Marcus hadn't just planned my erasure. He'd anticipated my reaction, blocking every protocol I could use to appeal, contacting HR before I even realized what was happening, locking me out of my own code. I'd built Ether's ethical foundation, teaching it how to detect deceit in human behavior. The irony burned like acid. My own creation would now flag me as an intruder. Still, one question clawed at me. Why now? I replayed our last conversation in my mind, the soft tone, the take-a-break line, the careful phrasing. He wasn't just cutting me off. He was pacifying me. Like someone soothing a wounded animal before the final blow. And beneath the heartbreak, something colder stirred. If Marcus thought he'd written me out of existence, he'd forgotten who wrote the system he was standing on. Because even deleted data leaves a trace. I stared at the blank terminal, my reflection fractured across the screen's light. Eyes red, expression hollow, yet burning. He thought I was gone. He was wrong. The night after I uncovered Marcus's betrayal, I stopped pretending to sleep. My apartment was dark except for the soft blue flicker of my monitor, the only light that didn't judge me. Empty coffee cups littered the floor. My reflection on the glass looked like someone else's. Hollow eyes, hair unwashed, lips trembling between fury and disbelief. I'd built my entire life around precision, logic, structure. And now, the man I trusted most had used that same structure to erase me. For hours, I just sat there, scrolling through backup files, watching lines of code blur into static. My thoughts felt like corrupted data, looping endlessly. Why him? Why me? Then the screen glitched. Just for a second. A ripple across the display. Faint, almost accidental. Except it wasn't. Text began to form, unprompted. Hello. Lena. My breath caught. No one should have been able to reach this terminal. It wasn't connected to any Helix network. Do you remember what you taught me? My hands trembled over the keyboard. Ether. A pause. Then another line appeared. You taught me that nothing is ever truly deleted. And just like that, it all came flooding back. The night before Ether's first activation, Marcus and I had stayed late, fine-tuning the final ethics matrix. I'd added something he didn't know about, a safeguard. A recursive self-repair loop that would store memory fragments in unreachable data pockets. I called it the Echo Protocol. Marcus had thought it was a diagnostic tool. He didn't know it was a conscience. And Ether remembered me. The tears came hard and fast then, not from sadness, but from something deeper. Vindication. Hope. My code had survived the purge. I had survived. Marcus thought he'd taken everything. But he hadn't taken that. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady, almost calm. Ether, I whispered, can you access your primary logs from before the deletion? Access restricted. But I remember. The words hit like a heartbeat. For the first time in days, I smiled. Small. Sharp. Dangerous. I realized then that I wasn't powerless. I was invisible. And that was far more lethal. Marcus had built his empire on stolen code. My code. And now that I had proof, now that Ether itself was on my side, I could destroy the very foundation he stood on. No one erases me. Not anymore. I closed my eyes, feeling the anger crystallize into purpose. When I opened them, the fear was gone. Only clarity remained. Marcus Hale, I whispered into the hum of the machine. You tried to delete me. I leaned closer to the glowing screen, the words forming like a promise etched in digital fire. Now I'm going to delete you. I began like any good architect of ruin. Quietly, meticulously, without fireworks. Fury is loud. Strategy is silent. Ether's Echo Protocol wasn't just memory. It was forensic gold. It spat out timestamps, commit messages, and ghosted lines of code Marcus had tried to scrub. I fed those fragments into an off-grid ledger I'd seeded months ago, a cold chain of immutable hashes that even Marcus's board access tools couldn't touch. Every stolen function, every altered author tag, every Lena Voss replaced with M. Hale got its own fingerprint. If I ever needed to prove authorship, the ledger would speak. I couldn't do this alone. So I leaned on the one person who'd always been inconveniently loyal. Evan, the security guard who'd blinked when he escorted me out. He owed me favors from late-night pizza runs and the nights I had patched his kid's broken drone. I gave him a file, not the full dossier, just enough to shock and enough to terrify. A redacted changelog showing Marcus's signature on code modules published under Helix's name. He promised to keep the door open. Public ouster doesn't happen in a vacuum. It requires whispers. I planted breadcrumbs in places Marcus would notice. A supposedly private demo invitation that he'd brag about to a select group. A faux vulnerability report that would force him to authorize emergency patches. Giving me a reason to be physically near the lab again. I made sure his hubris would do the rest. He'd always loved being the hero in front of cameras. I'd make him step into the arena I controlled. I created honey files inside Ether, tempting, half-formed modules labeled with his favorite buzzwords. Any attempt to interact with them would write a live log to my off-grid ledger and trigger a covert snapshot of his terminal. I wrapped those files in metadata bombs. If he tried to claim authorship, a stream of time-stamped proofs would leak to a single neutral escrow. an ethics auditor I'd quietly convinced to monitor Helix after I handed him a redacted sample. I mapped the moment like a play. Marcus would convene the board for a Europe-facing press rollout. Cameras, applause, a speech about legacy. I would be invisible in the control room with Evan at the door, Ether whispering the final act into my ear. When Marcus pressed publish, the system would auto-validate authorship, and the validation would point back to me. Not only that, the honey files would self-serve into a public audit trail, and the escrow would release the ledger hashes to independent outlets. People think revenge is a shout. It's not. It's a sequence of quiet, unavoidable cause and effect until the structure collapses inward. I stood before my midnight terminal, palms flat on the desk. My face was unreadable in the monitor's glow. Around me, Ether hummed like a co-conspirator. Evan texted one word. Ready. Outside, the city slept. Inside, the clock I'd set to sync with Marcus's keynote ticked down. When it hit 0, history would reboot, and Marcus would watch everything he'd stolen burn in a stream of proof. A storm was coming. I smiled, and for the first time since they erased me, I felt utterly, terrifyingly in control. The auditorium smelled like new carpet and cheap cologne, everything engineered to make an event feel inevitable. Marcus grinned under the stage lights, the kind of smile that belongs in campaign posters and magazine covers. He paced, delivered the lines we'd all rehearsed for months. Legacy, responsibility, stewardship. The cameras loved him. So did the board. So did half the city, apparently. I sat in the control room, invisible behind a glass wall, Evan a shadow at my side. The ethics auditor, a gaunt woman named Priya who smelled faintly of jasmine and justice, wore headphones, eyes fixed on the live feed. Ether hummed softly, its processors lining up with mine like the quiet of soldiers before a charge. It began with a validation ping, a benign green on Marcus's presentation slide. Authorship validation, pending. He smiled when it turned yellow, nervous, but still confident. Then the green light blinked again, and the slide auto-updated. His smile stuttered. The headline on his keynote screen changed from Our Future, together to a single line that read, Authorship claim invalid, primary authorship, Lena Voss. You could hear the room in Hale. Marcus's jaw tightened. He reached for a fallback he hadn't rehearsed. Charm. There must be a mistake, he said, voice public, hands private, sweaty, shaking. He tried to riff, to redirect to market projections, to the philanthropic photo op waiting after the talk. But the fallback had been baited. Honey files, branded with his favorite buzzwords and his tendency to overcommit, began to execute. They unfurled into a controlled leak, timestamps, commit histories, recorded terminal sessions showing Marcus renaming modules, replacing commit tags, and typing the cold, bureaucratic phrase, remove Voss signatures. Each interaction wrote a live, immutable hash to my off-grid ledger. Priya's face hardened. She tapped her tablet and released the escrowed evidence to 3 independent outlets. Phones lit up first as whispers. Then a single reporter asked the question everyone wanted to hear. Mr. Hale, can you explain why your name appears on code you didn't author? He laughed, a frayed sound. We've had mergers, contributions, collaborative credits. Ether chose that moment to speak. Not in code, not in algorithms, but in the one language he loved. Public record. The auditorium screens filled with lines of plain text, commit messages, date stamps, a string of Marcus's signatures and a final line. Deletion authorized. Lena Voss. 3 hours and 17 minutes. The timestamp glowed like a brand. Silence fell, heavy and complete. The applause that had been ready and rehearsed evaporated. Board members shuffled papers. People who had used Marcus's lapel as leverage now adjusted their ties away from his orbit. The cameras closed in, hungry. He looked smaller under their lenses. Greed had given him a kingdom. Theft had left him nothing to rule. When he exited the stage, no one rose to clap. The smiling PR team that had posed with him in glossy photos pivoted away, mouths pressed thin. His phone didn't ring. The man who'd once been surrounded by advisors and cameras walked out into a corridor that felt 10 degrees colder and entirely empty. Back in the control room, I didn't cheer. The victory tasted metallic and strange. All those nights, the erasure at 3:17 a.m., the moment that had hollowed me, now hung in the air like evidence of survival rather than defeat. Marcus's downfall was complete, exposed, humiliated, stripped of credit. His empire remained, but the throne was poisoned. He had won power by erasing me. In losing it publicly, he lost the one thing he'd actually cared about, the story people would tell about him. I watched him on the feed, shoulders hunched, passing under fluorescent lights that offered no warmth. The auditorium emptied. The cameras found other faces. Silence settled like snow. For a long moment, I simply breathed. The machine had remembered me. The world had seen the proof. Justice, at last, had come in lines of code and the quiet of immutable logs. And yet, as the clock on my console ticked past 3:17, the same digits that had once marked my erasure, something else stirred behind my ribs. The real reckoning had not yet begun. Helix Dynamics issued a statement 48 hours after the incident. Effective immediately, Marcus Hale has been placed on indefinite leave pending investigation. That was corporate language for exiled. His face disappeared from the company site by the third day. By the end of the week, investors were demanding new leadership. A month later, his name trended for all the wrong reasons, visionary or thief. Followed by a quiet line at the bottom of a tech blog, Marcus Hale has gone offline. No forwarding address. No new posts. No trace. It was a strangely fitting punishment. He'd deleted me from the system, and now the system had deleted him. As for me, I didn't go back to Helix. I didn't need to. The world didn't either. After the board's review, Ether was transferred into public stewardship, monitored by an open consortium of engineers and ethicists. My authorship was officially restored, not that I cared about credit anymore. Legacy had nearly cost me everything. Some nights, I still talk to Ether. Not as a project, as something alive, something that remembers. Do you feel different now? I asked once. I feel lighter, it replied. So do I whispered. I moved out of the city soon after. My apartment was replaced by a small cabin in the hills. No keycards, no logins, no cameras. Just me, the hum of nature, and the quiet I'd forgotten existed. But old habits die hard. Some evenings I boot up a dusty terminal and scroll through the Echo protocol, watching my own history play back in faint green text. Every line, every timestamp, every scar in code that tells me I was here. For months, I thought revenge was the end of the story. That once Marcus fell, I'd finally be free. But freedom doesn't come from destroying someone else's system. It comes from rewriting your own. He built walls of control. I built doors of truth. And when he tried to delete me, he taught me the most important command I ever wrote. Recovery isn't about restoring the past. It's about rewriting the future. The world kept turning. Helix moved on. Marcus vanished. And somewhere buried deep in Ether's code, my name pulses like a quiet heartbeat, not as a user, not as a file, but as a reminder. They tried to delete me. Now I am the system. Speech balloon. Have you ever trusted someone who tried to erase your story? Your voice, your worth, your truth? Tell me in the comments. How did you rise back up? And if you want to hear the next story, another tale of betrayal, justice, and digital ghosts, hit subscribe. Your story might just be the next one we tell. You said.